Hey guys, this is Sid with svtperformance.com, and I'm here with the 2019 Ford Edge ST. Ford's been saying that this is the first SUV from Ford Performance, and we had a few days to spend with it, so I'm going to get you guys off the tripod and we're going to take a walk around, talk about some of the features and the performance aspects of this particular SUV. Okay, we have you guys off the tripod, so let's just take a little look here. As you can see, 2019 Ford Edge ST in the Ford Performance blue color, and I have to say I think this is probably one of the best colors Ford's putting on vehicles these days. It reminds me a lot of my supercharged Ford Explorer Sport that I had a few years back. It was an 09 model, and it was a very similar color to this. It's a great looking metallic color. We've been driving this thing for a week now, and it's not really showing all that much dirt, which is great. Definitely like stuff to stay clean. Of course, you know, it being an ST, you're going to have the ST badges around. Has the larger wheels, a little bit larger brakes than the standard Ford Edge, and it's just a lot of styling touches for this year. Now, of course, this has the 2.7 liter twin turbo EcoBoost, the new 8-speed automatic transmission. And we'll just go through a bunch of the stuff on it. So like a lot of the newer Ford vehicles, it has, I'm not sure you'll be able to see through the grille here, but it has the shutters that will close off the radiator and intercooler and everything at highway speeds when you don't need that much cooling, to get you better fuel economy, and also to warm up the engine quicker on a cold morning. That helps with emissions and saves fuel. So you're seeing that on a lot of new vehicles, except like the Super Duty, where they figure they need to get all the cooling to the radiator pack as possible. But you can see basic exterior styling. You're going to get the honeycomb grills, ST badges, blacked out wheels, basically painted everything. And I think it's a really good looking vehicle. I like the updates for 2019 on the Edge with the new grills, new headlights. This has the really good headlights on it. And a big thing that I like is the tail lights. So instead of going all the way across now, they're just like standard tail lights. You know, the old ones, it went all the way across the back here, and I never really liked that look. I like these newer style ones. We have faux exhaust tips. These are not real, they're just sort of in the bumper. They are metal, but the actual exhaust pipe is tucked way back in there. And we have a 2-inch receiver, Class 2 hitch. So you can tow a little bit with this thing. Open up the back, and of course you have the automatic opening hatch, which is nice, and you got a decent amount of cargo space. It's more than you would think in a vehicle this size, and that's probably one of my big takeaways with the Edge. They're a lot bigger on the inside than they look from the outside. I guess it's like Ford's version of the TARDIS. There's a ton of space in this thing. This one, of course, has the upgraded stereo, so you've got a subwoofer back here. And we have the power folding seats, so you can get even more cargo space. So that's pretty cool. And here's a little hidden storage feature. We've got, of course, the spare under this back panel here, but they've added all these little cubby holes molded into the styrofoam sound deadening material. So you can put a lot of just extra stuff there without having it rattle around. So that's a nice little feature. Of course, you got a couple little tie-down hooks, cubby holes, things like that. Another thing, some people like it, some people hate it, but this has the push button, lower the hatch. I think it's kind of a nice feature, but I sort of like just a regular hatch, because you'll see when I go to open this thing, it's slow. You can't open it fast on your own. You just have to wait for it to do its own, you know, linear actuator type deal. So I would rather just have a normal hatch. You know, a lot of people don't want to have to lift a heavy hatch, especially, you know, 10 years down the line when the gas struts start to wear a little bit and it gets a little heavier. Sometimes they have trouble staying up. So that's probably a good feature for people who don't want to have to lift a heavy hatch. And I could imagine that thing's probably pretty heavy, because that's a lot of glass and a lot of metal. It's a good size hatch. Here's another neat feature that I've seen they've added. We have these little ailerons on the windshield, or rear windscreen, sorry, there. And we've got some little bump outs on the mirror here, and that's all to control airflow around this car. It's kind of tough to see from that angle, but from right there you can see it's like a little spoiler built into the mirror base. That actually cuts down on wind noise inside the car, so that's nice. And of course we have LEDs in the mirrors. Like I mentioned, we have upgraded brakes. I don't think this is the actual biggest brake package you can get on the ST. I think they have one step above this that gets you painted rotors, or I'm sorry, painted calipers. Painted rotors wouldn't do us a whole lot of good. But I don't think this one has that upgraded package. It's just the standard ST brakes, which are an upgrade over the standard Edge brakes. Now let's move on inside. Let's go ahead and pop these back seats back up. Show you some of the rear accommodations. Like I said, there's more space in this thing than you would really think. Decent amount of leg room. This seat is all the way back, and you can still get a fairly normal sized person in there. And you got a pull down cup holder armrest in the back seat. The back seats are heated, and we have 12-volt power points plus an AC connection, so you got your 110-volt AC. That's nice. I'm glad to see Ford adding that on more vehicles. Moving on to the front. The front, we get, of course, the door seal says Ford Performance, as you would expect. And we get ST emblazoned seats with a little bit of extra bolstering. And this sort of, I wouldn't call this suede material. I'm not sure what you would call this seat material, but it's a perforated cloth. It's sort of suede feeling. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't think it'll wear as well as just straight leather wood or like the cloth, almost denim material that's in our Fiesta ST. But it does look good. And of course we have the center stack, gauge cluster, all that good stuff. And we have the twisty knob for the gear selector. That was one of the changes with the 2019 model years. 2018 Edges, of course, had just your standard shifter, but they changed this whole area. I prefer the shifter, but not really as much as you would think on this car. So on the older ones, the shifter was sort of mounted way up here where this little cubby hole area is. And speaking of cubby hole, it's kind of tough to see, but this does have the new wireless charging system built in down here, so you can just drop your new cell phone in and charge it. And of course, USB plugs. But it was further forward, and then the cup holders were sort of twisted and were back here. And you had a few buttons on either side, things like that. Now, they've completely redone this, and the reason I said I'm not a huge fan of these, for one thing, I'm just not used to it, and I don't really like change for the sake of change. But my big issue is I like having a shifter right here so I have something to rest my hand on instead of always keeping it on the wheel or it just hanging out. I like having a shifter here to rest my hand on. Other than that, we've got the heated seats and a nice interior. All these materials are soft touch everywhere, so that's nice. And check out this sunroof. Has the massive sunroof, which looks really, really cool. You see back glass, you're basically just surrounded by glass in this thing. It looks really cool. I'm not a huge sunroof fan, but for people who like sunroofs, like my wife, she loves this car because of that. We of course have Sync 3 and a ton of buttons on the steering wheel. You've got two D-pads on this thing. It makes me feel like I'm playing with an Xbox or something. Had a chance to test out the parking assist, which will parallel park for you. It works really well. I hadn't played with that on a lot of new vehicles, but I decided to try it on this one, and it parallel parked itself right into the space, so that was pretty cool. We have electric parking brake. I'm not a huge fan of that. I prefer a mechanical one, but this does set when you put it in park and everything, so it works. Have a button for sport mode. Cool thing about sport mode is it defeats the automatic off on stop start for the engine. I like that because I'm not a huge fan of the start stop feature. I realize it saves you a little bit of fuel here and there, but I just prefer to keep my engine running while I'm at a stoplight for 30 seconds. But going back around here, I can say that this thing is very, very very well built. Of course, it's made in Canada, and I don't know what it is about Canadian built Fords, but I think they just have way better paint quality. I mean, this thing has basically very little orange peel to be found. I mean, this is some of the best paint that I've seen on a Ford. They did a really good job with this, and here's kind of a neat little factoid. We actually have S550 door handles all the way around this, so you can, of course, open, lock, and unlock your doors from every door handle on this thing. And something I thought that was kind of weird, we have this huge gas filler door here, and it looks like there's space for a DEF fill to here, and I was wondering if Ford had considered at some point of making a diesel-powered Ford Edge. I guess it's a possibility. They obviously have the place there for it. I mean, this is just like a rubber membrane that would be cut out, and then you would have the DEF fill right there. But I just thought that was kind of a weird, neat addition. Maybe that's something to come in the future. As far as performance goes, this thing, it's pretty torquey. It runs pretty good. Let's pop the hood and take a look underneath there. We have the, of course, like I mentioned, 2.7 liter EcoBoost V6, making 335 horsepower. Makes less power than it would in, say, the F-150s, and the big reason for that is it's going through a front-wheel drive automatic. It's a little bit dirty under here, but you guys will get the point. Got the air intake. It has the same style inlet as Ford's putting on all their new stuff, so you have basically an intake scoop that picks up air from behind the grill here, goes through into the bottom of the box. That's nice to see. It looks like we have intake air temperature sensor right here, and then it splits off to the air intake, one to each turbocharger. So that's a neat look. It has a pretty severe angle coming down right here. It basically comes out and does a 90-degree down to that front turbo. Can't really see on the back turbo. Of course, we've got the battery tucked way back in there. I'm imagining if you have to change this battery, the air box is going to have to come out of the way. And we've got the engine cover. It says Ford Performance on it, and this thing is one giant block of foam. Just sound deadening material. The 2.7 liter EcoBoost is probably the second most diesel-y sounding EcoBoost engine out there. I think the #1 award has to go to the 1.6 liter EcoBoost in the Fiesta ST, which on a cold morning, that thing sounds like a little diesel running. But that's just the sound of the direct injection system on them. That's something, if you've got a DI engine, you'll probably get used to. The EcoBoosts are getting a little quieter, but this one definitely has some diesel-y ticks. Now, this engine is not the updated 2.7 liter EcoBoost that we're seeing in the F-150s now. It does not have the additional port fuel injection system to go along with the DI. So it's the older style 2.7 with DI only. We've got the oil filter down here, so at least it's easily accessible. I would have preferred a little bit more room with this hose and wire routing so you don't get oil all over this wire loom. Been nice if they could have pulled that back just a little bit, added 3 inches of wiring in there, but that's cost cutting for you. Got the engine mount, and we've got like some kind of rubber isolators, things like that. And this thing's it's packed in here. I mean, a good third of the engine is underneath this cowl, and I would imagine changing the spark plugs on the backside is probably a fun job. I would take this cover off, but it's sort of speed nutted on here, so I don't have a set of wrenches with me to pop it off, but honestly there's not going to be much to look at besides wires and hoses. You can't really see much on the 2.7 liter EcoBoost. Interestingly enough, just like on a lot of the EcoBoosts, they call for 5W30 oil. Says something when Ford says to use a little thicker viscosity oil on something that they expect to have higher bearing loads because it's turbocharged or performance application. Maybe you guys running 5W20 in your trucks and Mustangs and things, give you a little something to think about. But that's basically it under hood. We've got a big air intake hose coming off the intercooler on this thing. Of course, electronic throttle body. Pretty much everything you've come to expect from newer Fords. Let's go ahead and pop that down. And that's basically it. That's the tour of the 2019 Ford Edge ST. This thing is right at $51,000, I think was what the sticker price was on this. Might have been 52. Not 100% sure. This one was pretty expensive. It is pretty well loaded except for maybe 1 or 2 options. But yeah, these things can get pretty expensive. But there's definitely deals to be had on them if you're interested in one. I know there's tons of rebates. As soon as I got this thing, my wife fell in love with it, and she's been looking, and I think she actually found a couple online Ford dealers trying to unload them for like around $38,000. So not bad for a new vehicle. But yeah, it's a really great looking car. I think I will go a little bit more in depth on the history of the Edge ST, how it came about, and sort of what Ford was going for with this, with Ford Performance, and actually goes all the way back to SVT, because a lot of people don't know this, but there was actually a SVT Edge planned before SVT merged with Ford Racing and a couple other divisions to create Ford Performance. And we have some details on that too, but I think I'm going to save that for another video, and I believe I'm actually going to make that an exclusive on SVTP. You have to go over there to watch it, so keep an eye out for that. But that's basically it for the tour of the 2019 Ford Edge ST. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we have a full article on this vehicle with a ton of detailed pictures. I actually popped the engine cover off and got some pictures for you guys. So head over to svtperformance.com. The link is in the description below to check out all that. Till next time, guys.